I hope you had a good night last night. Before we get started, I wanted everybody to give a round of applause to all the awesome people here who put on DevOps Days Chicago. It's been a great event. As a speaker, I can tell you this is actually the best I've been treated at any event I've ever spoken at. Whoa. Except for that. You want me to tell you a secret, though? The reason I'm asking you to applaud is not just because these guys are awesome, and they are awesome. I mean, I'm not making this up, but it's also because it makes you put down your phone. You have to put down your phone to clap, and it's a great thing. So you came here to learn about the rules of DevOps, and I didn't actually write my talk before I got here. I'm kind of a really lazy person, fundamentally. And when I got here and we had the speaker dinner, and Matt gave this talk about, what we were doing here, and I decided to pivot my talk a little bit. I wanted to turn it into something a little bit more interactive, so I hope you guys are prepared to pay attention because you're going to have your turn to talk. Because this isn't going to be the rules of DevOps. This is going to be DevOps therapy. We are going to have a therapy session today. There's going to be no Q&A. I'm going to talk for about 10 minutes. And while I'm talking, I want you to think about the worst thing you have ever seen. Something that made you put your head in your hands because you were so incredulous. Or maybe you actually had to get up from your desk and just walk around to burn off the anger that you had to deal with this problem. Or maybe if you're like me, you had to go tweet about it so you could vent. And the reason for doing it this way is, yeah, I've been doing DevOps for a long time, before it was actually even a word. But my experiences are not your experiences. Every single one of you is a special snowflake. In all the jobs I've had, you probably have problems that I've never seen, because everybody is different, and everybody's infrastructure is different. So I thought it'd be more useful to turn it into a group exercise to where people could state their problems. And maybe somebody else here would have a good answer. Or if you just want to bitch, that's cool. Complain. I love complaining. It is one of my favorite things to do, as any of my coworkers can tell you. But we are going to try to keep it constructive. I know that some of you may be here with your managers. Is anybody here with their managers? Show their hands. Yeah, it's going to be hard for you. And I want to make sure we sanitize this. This doesn't mean you can't curse. I have very creative uses for the English language, and I have to suppress them when I have a microphone on, and it's really hard for me. But you just go ham. Do what you need to do. But when I'm talking about sanitizing, I mean I don't want to hear people's names, and I don't want to hear company names. And we want to actually get something good out of this. So part of it is venting, and part of it is asking people, what can I do to make this better? So first, I'm going to talk about myself a little bit, and I'm going to tell you about my path into DevOps and kind of what's happened with my career and what got me here today. And I'm going to tell you what I think DevOps means, because this seems to be a big argument in this industry, which is weird because we're all at a conference called DevOps Days. So first, I want you to, as you're thinking of your DevOps, I'm going to skip forward a couple slides just so you can see this, because this is fantastic. I found this on Twitter 2 days ago. And I was like, dude, I have to screenshot this so I can show people this. And he's like, okay. This is an example of DevOps. It is one of many examples of DevOps, the type of DevOps, when I'm talking about DevOps. We are restarting our web clusters to help recover an overloaded Redis instance. Restarting an entire cluster of services because of a single Redis instance sounds like a serious infrastructure problem. So this can be one of the things that, upsets you. So going back to who I am, I'm Randi Harper. I am a FreeBSD source committer, or rather I was. My commit bit's kind of on hiatus. I'll be back to it eventually. Previous to the last 6 days of Twitter, that is probably what you knew me as. Now you might know me as the crazy woman on Twitter. It's okay. I'm not here to talk about Twitter today. I am also a co-host on the podcast Floss Weekly, which is a show on twit.tv. Randall Schwartz is the main host of it. And every week we interview a new open source project. It's really cool because when I interview people, I actually get to learn about things that I never would have known, projects I never would have heard of otherwise. And right now I work for Kixeye, which is a gaming company in San Francisco. And it is one of my favorite jobs that I have ever had. I am a senior DevOps engineer there. And I'm not just saying this because my VP is here in the audience, wherever she might be standing, unless there she is, back there. So, during my career, I've had a lot of titles. I've done a lot of things. I have been a systems administrator, a developer. I did QA for a while. I did tech support. Now I'm a senior DevOps engineer. I even went and did technical evangelism, which is basically where they pay me to speak, and I love that. This is one of my favorite things, because you guys are all sitting there, and I'm right here, and everybody's paying attention to me, and that is awesome. But before I did the whole technical evangelism thing, I was an engineer for about 10 years. I had been a developer or a system administrator all of that time, and I was in the Bay Area. And then I decided to GTFO. I decided to leave the Bay Area because it felt like I was in this bubble and I wasn't seeing what was happening in the rest of the world. I honestly feel if California did break off and become its own island, we probably wouldn't notice until we looked at our ping times. So I left, I went to Seattle, I decided to try out support just to get, a better understanding of the industry. And that was fun, and I did that for Isilon. It was cool because it was FreeBSD products, and like, hello, I am a FreeBSD committer, so that was awesome. But then I went to go work for Amazon Web Services as a technical evangelist. And this was right after I chopped off all my hair and made it really bright colors and discovered that I am in fact an extrovert, which I did not know before. Like, I was the person who would hide in the corner at parties. So all of that happened, and just a second. I love the public speaking. And it was an interesting experience, and I really appreciate that I had it. But I missed engineering. I missed writing code, and I missed the art of infrastructure. Because I got to talk to other people about how to make their infrastructure, but I didn't get to make my own. And it made me sad. So I decided to move back to California and start my job search. So this was about a 5-year gap since I'd been in engineering. And when I came back, I was like, okay, I don't know what I want to be because I'm not seeing many system administrator positions out there. Like, it wasn't on the job boards. So I'm just going to go on Monster, and I'm going to post that I am looking for a job that is interesting and challenging. And I just assumed they would look at my resume and see I'm a technical person. But the only calls I got were from Affleck asking me if I wanted to sell insurance. So I feel like something was lost in translation there. And then I started thinking, okay, this isn't working. I need to actually be an active part of this job search. So I went on the job boards, I started looking, I was like, DevOps. What the hell is DevOps? That sounds like me. That is what I do. I'm a developer and I'm ops, and you can put those together and you get DevOps, and it wasn't quite the truth of what it is, but it was close enough. I was the sysadmin who would break out GDB without even thinking of it. I learned to C in a fit of rage with a bottle of scotch, so I could install FreeBSD off of a USB drive. I became the sysinstall maintainer because of that. Don't go there. It was not pretty code. It hadn't been maintained in 15 years, and this was my first experience with C. But like, this is the type of sysadmin that I was. And so DevOps kind of seemed like this natural progression because I always wanted to do more development, but I didn't want to be a developer because then I would hate writing code. So I didn't realize at the time that DevOps was this huge political conversation. And that's strange to me. People are like, it's not a title, it's a culture. It's not a culture, it's a tool set. It's not a tool set, it's a title. And let me tell you people, this is why we can't have nice things. I think we can all agree that DevOps is a good thing and that we like it. But I think we all have a different idea about what DevOps is and why it's good. So, it's not just a title, but that's part of it. I have the title Senior DevOps Engineer, and I am proud of that title. And a lot of people are like, it should not be a title. DevOps is not a title. What are you talking about? And excuse me, I am proud of my title. I will represent that all day long, because that is what I do. But I cannot institute DevOps at an organization all by myself. It is a culture as well. A company can't go out and hire somebody and say, okay, we're going to put DevOps engineer on your business card, and we've got a DevOps engineer now. We're doing the DevOps. Like, that doesn't work. You can't just do DevOps by hiring a person. It's a culture change, and that person helps drive the culture change. And it can be an uphill battle. You're having to change the process. You're having to drive the communication between teams. So people talk about silos a lot, and I hear that metaphor and I like it, but I'm going to try a different one. And that's DevOps is a bridge. We're a bridge of communication between teams. It's not just about DevOps talking to devs, it's about devs talking to QA. It's about teams working together. And a really driving part of this is respect. You have to have respect for other teams. They have to have respect for you. You need to promote the knowledge between teams. So a good example of this is at my job. Developers do not know how to restart services. And I'll discuss this a little bit more when I get to my angry DevOps. But I have to teach them. I want to teach them some parts of what it is to just run a Unix box, to be able to know their infrastructure. They don't just need to know their single piece of code, and they don't get to develop that all by themselves in a room. I have to be a part of that conversation. So where I work at Kixeye, we're still learning how to do this. When I came on, I was the first DevOps engineer on my team. And I got there, and so the way, it's an open office space. It's tables kind of like this, but with computers. And development is on this side. And then I sit in a row right here with all the managers, which let me tell you how much they love my cursing. And then we have QA sitting right here. But they make me look good because they're really loud, and I tend to be really quiet, so I get away with quietly cursing while they're over there screaming. Because QA, crazy loud, very excitable young men. And for a while, I had problems getting things done because I'm not used to that. I'm not used to the open workspaces because it can be kind of distracting, and I'm not used to the noise, so I'd put on my headphones, and I'd work to get things done. But I realized I wasn't a part of the communication. I wasn't a part of the conversation. I was losing out on a lot of things that were happening on the floor. I'd be very task-oriented, and you can't really be that in a small organization like that. You have to be a part of every conversation. So I took off my headphones, and slowly I learned to get work done while actually listening to QA. And I saw some of the problems QA was having. We had one developer, one senior developer out of I think 4 or 5, that would walk across the floor to QA and tell them what he needed, or tell them about the problems. And that was a serious issue because nobody wants to stay late. And QA, because they didn't necessarily know what they needed to test for, they were there late some nights. And I'm not going to walk out the door when this whole team of people there, because I'm going to feel like a dick, and I don't want to be that person. I will stay there late with them in solidarity, and I don't want to stay late. I want to go home and play World of Warcraft. Who wants to stay at work late? So we're trying to change that communication, and I went to the developers, and this is still kind of an active conversation because I'm having to change their process. And when a team gets their first DevOps person and they're starting to adopt the DevOps culture, they may not realize how their process is broken. So you have to approach it with respect, and you have to approach it from a very learning angle, teaching them. You have to promote that knowledge between the teams. So you have to build the bridge, and I was building the bridge between QA and Dev. But it's not just about that either. I mean, my primary job is not mediator. I mean, if it was, I would probably be paid a lot less, honestly. My job is to wear a lot of hats, and I think all of the DevOps engineers out here can agree, we have to know a lot of things. They talk about T-shaped individuals, which is where you know a lot of stuff, but you're really good in one, and that's usually the type of people we try to hire. So I would have to wear, sometimes I'd be wearing my mediator hat, sometimes I'd be wearing my monitoring engineer hat, sometimes I'd be a performance engineer, sometimes I'd wear my developer hat as I go into meetings with developers and tell them, no, you cannot have 96 gigs of RAM in that server, that is not reasonable. You need to re-architect your product a little bit. And sometimes you even have to wear your technical support hat. Sorry, I'm just like really dehydrated right now because of the drinking last night, so recovering slowly. So in DevOps, I came up with this phrase, and it's that we're artists of logic. And I know that's really weird. You don't expect to hear artist and logic together. But if you think about what we do, we design infrastructure. We design solutions. And every single one of them is unique. Nothing really seems all that cookie cutter, even though we have all these recipes and cookbooks and Puppet modules and tools out there designed to build our infrastructure for us. We can build some really messed up products because we can do whatever we want. And we can find a million ways to do one thing. And it can be art. You can do something that is so elegant and you're so proud of it. But then you can not make documentation for it. You can not train other people. And then somebody's going to come in at some point after you've left the organization, and they're going to see this work of art that you made, and they're going to put their head in their hands, and you're going to be their DevOps. So you have to be careful about how you use tools. You have to be careful about documentation and training other people in what it is that you're doing, because you don't want to be that person that they're complaining about. And what if you walk into somebody else's DevOps? What if you join an organization and you see this disaster of infrastructure that is not well laid out and is overly complex? And what if they're still in the company? If they're still in the company, they can be very protective of their art. This microphone's freaking me out, dude. They can be very, very protective of their art. And you have to approach them with this respect and this communication and be like, I'm sorry, but this is not really a good way of doing this. Here is an easier, better way that is more maintainable, and we're using the tools the way they were designed. And that way when people come in, they don't need to know that we run our backups out of Jenkins. Yeah, I'll get to that one later too. So it's a balancing act of the respect and of knowing how to have the backbone and the understanding of politics to get things done, because you have to stand up for what you believe in. And I think it's probably true that all of us here are very passionate about what we do. We care about the infrastructure. That is why we are DevOps. That is why we decided to learn all of these things. So when you're approaching these people, I found a good way to do this is to bring your solution, have it ready, have it done. If you can do that in your spare time, it's a good way to promote change. But then you also have to be concerned about wearing your trainer hat, because you are going to train people on how to use that solution. And a lot of people see that and all the work that's going to happen there, and they decide to not even try, which means we build on the DevOps that is there. And then it gets to be this gargantuan DevOps, and there's all these dependencies, these services that depend on it, and you're never going to get it changed then. So we need to attack these things early. We need to fix the problems quickly. And what I want to see here is when we're doing this therapy, I want you guys to get mad. I want you to be very, very invested in this talk. I want you to be driven. I want you to be motivated. Because after this talk is over, I think there's like a 5-minute break. I want to see you angrily typing on your iPhones an email to your manager or to your team saying, we need to fix this thing right now. And it's really funny watching people angrily type on iPhones too. So I would enjoy this. So I'm going to show you 2 examples of DevOps that I've seen at my current job. One of them is my own personal DevOps. And it's not super infrastructure, oh my God, this is a bad thing. It was a small fix, but I had been working really hard that day on fixing other problems, and then I realized that we have this application that runs. And it has 48 processes that run, and they all log to a different file. These files never get log rotated. So they were sitting at like 2 gigs each on all of our servers for each of like 48 files. And they're only at 2 gigs because somebody went through and deleted all of them like X number of days ago. So I was like, holy crap, okay, this is another DevOps. I had to go and fix this log rotate. Big surprise. So I'm going to show you what I wrote, and I want you to tell me why it's wrong. What could happen here that is terrible? Does anybody see? Come on, guys. I know it's early morning, but think about regular expressions. Think about how log rotate works. Work with me here. What's that? Correct. I did not think of this at the time. I usually consider myself the regex whisperer. I was not the regex whisperer there. I was the regex disaster. What's even worse is I didn't realize this for 3 months. So all of a sudden I get a page that all of our application servers are running out of inodes. I'm like, how the hell did that happen? So I go and finally I track it down, and there's like 6 million files in each of these directories. I'm like, oh God, please nobody notice what I did. So I went through and fixed it very quickly. Deleting the files took a while, unfortunately, because these are servers under load. But it was a little bit of a scary thing, and it proves that all of us can make mistakes, even with the best of intentions, even in the most simple example of trying to fix broken things. We can have 5 million log files in one directory with one simple typo. And the next example I have, this is a matter of opinion, but I have very strong opinions, and my opinions are right. We should use appropriate tooling. Just because you can do something doesn't mean you should do something. Jenkins is a very sensitive topic for me. And when people bring up Jenkins, I wince, because I see horrible things happening with it. At my job, we use Jenkins as command orchestration. We are using it to restart services, which means developers don't actually know how to restart services. So the other day, I like to live by the seat of my pants. I deploy Puppet changes to production all the time. I'm like, you know what, if it messes up, I'll fix it. It's fine, I'll get this. But I just deployed something, and it broke Puppet on a couple of our weirder servers. So I was like sitting there frantically trying to fix it, because this is production, and I don't want the pager going off. I have a limited amount of time before that happens. And then a developer comes up to me. He's like, Randy, I broke our development environment. It's not working. Our application isn't working. I was like, okay. He's like, I restarted one of the services. I was like, okay, good. Did you restart the other one? He was like, how? So I had him sit there with me. I was like, service, restart. And he's like, oh, okay, that's cool. And he walks away. And he comes back like 5 minutes later. He's like, what was that command again? But I was in the middle of this important thing, and it irritated me. And the reason he didn't know is because of the so many layers of abstraction that we had. They didn't actually know how to do these basic tasks, because we had them sitting as Jenkins jobs as part of our deploy. Like a deploy goes out and restarts services, and that can be a good idea, but I still think people should know how to restart services. That is a very basic thing that developers should know. They have root for a reason, and they only have root on non-production. I would not give them root on production, just to clarify. So we use Jenkins to run our backups. And I asked one of our ops people, I was like, why do we do that? Because that's a terrible idea. And it turned into this long conversation, which basically ended when he said, I don't like cron. What? Are you kidding me? You don't like cron? Do you even Unix, bro? And I was relating this to another coworker. He's like, yeah, I don't like cron either. I was like, where am I at? Is this the Bay Area? Do you know technology? Have you been here? Do you even go here? And it's so frustrating to me that people want to use Jenkins to do everything, because it is not command orchestration. And that means that you have to write all this custom documentation on how to do things, because we're not doing things the normal way. And that's a hard thing to train. You bring in new people, and they have to learn that we have like 5 different Jenkins servers that all do different things, one for backups and just all over the place. As you can tell, I'm very, very invested in not having Jenkins do things it's not meant to do. Very passionate about this. I have to calm down. So I've had my DevOps therapy, and now it's you guys' turn. I want to hear about what's the horrible things you have to deal with, and it could be a past job, it could be a current one. And if you're looking for an answer as to how to deal with it, I want to get people to help answer that too. So who is first? And I will pick on people if you don't raise your hand. And when I ask you what makes you mad, you better not say, a presenter at DevOps Day is picking on me this early in the morning. So who's first? Let's talk about our feelings.
Oh, I get to talk into a microphone. That's awesome. I hate that when we do a new application or whatever, we make sure that we monitor the service and the log file. And when we see an alert that the process is down or the log file has error or fatal or severe in it, we submit a ticket and the developers tell us, well, product's going to have to prioritize that. And so they don't do anything about it. So we're like, well, okay, fine. We're just going to stop monitoring it because it's annoying. And then 3 months later, when they're trying to close out all their tickets, they say, is this still happening? I'm like, I don't know. Look at the freaking log. Figure it out on your own. Or worse, I say, how do you reproduce it? I don't know. There's a stack trace. Maybe you could figure it out from the stack trace because you know your code. So there we go.
It's a good one. Does anybody have any input for this problem? Can you relate? Does anybody else here have the same type of problem sometimes? Everybody has that problem. People are just shy. It's early morning. All right, who's next? In the back?
Just a general lack of automation mindset. When you work with people that think like, oh, I only have to do this once and it's only going to take 10 seconds, and then they do it again the next day and again the next day. And it's like, why aren't we scripting this and getting it off your plate? And people just don't tend to add up all the time that they've spent on this when they could have spent 30 minutes scripting it.
So is it like the DevOps who should be scripting it, or who should be scripting it?
Anyone that does it repeatedly should script it.
See, you say that, but I have seen some shell scripts written by our developers who have a severe lack of understanding of shell scripts. You do not need to use semicolons. All right, who else? Come on, guys. Let's talk about our feelings.
So this happened Tuesday morning. I have developers who do not know what a cluster is. They think when one node of a 2, 4, 8 node cluster is down, that they are down. And then they announce to QA that it is down and that they are stopped because one node in the cluster is down. No, okay, it is down. You're not down. Your environment is not down. Please continue to develop. Please continue to QA. Please continue your work because infrastructure, once again, has clustered an environment and made it highly available so you can do your work. I feel better.
All right, who else? Come on, give me your war stories. I know you guys have seen some shit. Tell me about it. Who's next?
This isn't really a war story, but developers who pepper their code with system out print line, just randomly all over the place, and then I'm a developer. I'm a lead developer, and I keep having to tell my people, don't do that.
Okay, over here? Okay,
yeah.
There we go.
And then in general, just organization. When I try to organize a project or having folders, a decent amount of structure, and naming things somewhat appropriately, I don't just mean variable names, I mean putting things in places that make sense, not just for development, but for everything. Why doesn't anybody seem to think, I feel like the world has lost the ability to understand folders because now they only know Google search.
All right, I'm going to start a war right quick, which has to do with white space. Because this is a good way to get people fired up. When I started at Kicksite, I did my first commit to Puppet. And I'd never used Puppet before, but it's not hard. It's another programming language, whatever. And then it kicked it back at me because it's like you're using tabs instead of 2 space tabs. Who the hell uses 2 space tabs? That is an abomination. Okay, you people. Horrible. Let me tell you a thing.
Oh, I'm sorry, not the two-space indent.
Two-space indents, yes.
Spaces.
Yes, spaces, that's what I'm talking about.
Not yet, white space.
Let me tell you a thing, sir. I learned my white space from FreeBSD's Style Man page because I used to get called out anytime I did anything even a little bit wrong, and we used tabs. And I've noticed the BSD developers prefer tabs and GPL developers prefer spaces. And I think, and I'm going to start another war, this is because GPL developers are used to enforcing their view on the world. Yeah. I get excited. There gets to be feedback. All right, who else? I saw somebody else raise their hand. Over here.
Three spaces is the only real.
On that slide up there, it looks like you used two-space tabs.
All right. Truth be told, this is not a direct copy of what I had at work. I went on Google last night and I was like log rotate example, and then I just like changed the first thing. Also, Puppet manages our log rotate stuff, so I don't have anything to do with that. But good catch.
So yeah, about that, the correct answer is to use what's there already. But as far as typos go, if you have stuff in your Chef or Puppet or Ansible or whatever that manipulates your DNS, make sure that you're using the form of the call that deletes a single record rather than a single zone. Otherwise, you could end up pretty much taking yourself entirely off the internet.
That's good. All right, who else? I saw their hands over here.
Yeah, so one thing I saw that really ticked me off as a developer and operations person was code repositories that contain the code, but the build scripts weren't actually in the repository. You had to know which other repository to check out that had the build script that was part of like the ops repository. Yeah.
I know that
seemed
feel.
really heinous.
All right, let's get this side of the room a little bit. Who over here has war stories?
Thank you, Kevin. Yeah, one that really frustrated me recently was I run a big chunk of infrastructure internally, compute-orientated, and we had problems a couple of years ago with one system DOSing our internal DNS servers. And so because I've got probably the most cores under me than anyone in the company, they decided, all right, they're going to set up some caching DNS servers for us. And that was okay, so we're using those, and that's fine. And then all of a sudden, they started like just timing out randomly and having issues. And I kept on poking the guys to look after them. It's like, come on, guys, let me have a look. And eventually, after having to give them TCP dumps, they're like, oh, yeah, we turned on NetFilter on those. And basically, NetFilter ran out and was just throwing out DNS packets on the floor.
That's awesome. All right, who else over here? Come on, this side's being quiet. Is this where all the introverts are sitting? Because I saw that talk yesterday, and I want to encourage you to speak your mind.
At a previous job, not long after they started feeding Windows names into dynamic DNS, someone named their Windows machine localhost, and everything broke.
That is a really good one, and I feel like I need to do this now. All right, one more question? Or one more? Go for it.
Developers who use the system name or something special about the system name to derive configuration about that system. My name ends with -3 because we've always named this type of device with -3, and I know that if I add 2 to it, I can find this related device up until and this is buried deep in the code, all these assumptions, and then somebody changes the name and names something slightly different, and all the code breaks.
I have seen our ops do that too. All right, well, thank you guys very much. This is good. I hope you enjoyed your DevOps therapy. It was Great being here.
Everyone thank Randy for a great talk. And I think we'll